We have Magnus Carlsen taking on Teimour Radjabov here, a handshake, and this one is going to be an absolutely exciting game of chess on our hands. Magnus, not in the best of shapes, just lost his game to Fabiano Caruana with a rook blunder. That explains him coming to the board early on, trying to focus in. Meanwhile, Teimour Radjabov, well, he hasn't been playing much chess recently, but an absolute monster on the board. Has beaten Magnus before in the past. Let's see how he fares today. A handshake here and d4 by Magnus, knight f6. Knight comes out to c3. He's playing the Jobawa London with bishop f4. Interesting choice here by Magnus. You can see him being so stoic there. c6. This is a very solid setup chosen by Radjabov. Bishop comes out to f5. Black has an active bishop. He'll play e6 and then put his other bishop out. White plays his pawn to f3 with the idea of pushing his kingside pawns, and look at Magnus go all out against Teimour. He plays h6, making square for the bishop to drop back. The bishop comes to d3. Naturally, you want to take that bishop. Bishop takes d3 seems like a very logical move. He takes it and Magnus takes back with the pawn. Now he controls these squares. Knight d7. He brings his knight to e2. Black's position is very solid, like bishop e7. But you just are not sure if you should castle here because these pawns are just so close to the king. Queen comes to b6, attacking the pawn on b2. And also perhaps making way for long castle. King comes up to f2. Just connecting the rooks. Bishop e7. And by the way, if you would have taken the pawn, rook b1 and rook b7 would have given white an advantage. So Magnus ignores it. Radjabov develops his bishop here. And now Magnus can go queen to d2. Or maybe there is also knight to a4 when he pushes the queen away. Let's say, for example, knight a4, queen a5, you can go a3, b4. Magnus goes queen d2. He defends the pawn on b2. Pawn comes up to a6. And now rook to b1. He brings his rook to the square with the idea later to perhaps expand with b4, a3, b4, knight a4, knight c5, playing on the dark squares. And I think it's a question to Teimour whether he should unleash himself or not. He does it. He plays his pawn to c5. Magnus undoubles his pawns, but now black gets some breathing space. Pawn push. Knight has to drop back to d7 and rook c1, taking the open file. I love how quickly Magnus is playing here, but at the same time, look at the structure, yeah? No squares for the black pieces. Black has to tread very carefully here. Like, for example, a move like bishop d6 might lose instantly to knight a4, and suddenly the bishop could be hanging. So maybe queen a5, maybe queen b4. Yes, queen a5 played by Teimour. A good move here. And now, how does Magnus take advantage of his space, better coordination? Because he would have loved to move the knight here. But now the queen is hanging. Maybe just move the queen up one square to break the pin is not such a bad idea. Doubling on the c file is also not a bad idea. Meanwhile, black is of course thinking how exactly to park his king. Short castle maybe. Rook c2 played by Magnus. But now there's knight b6. Knight b6 to knight c4. It's a good plan here. A knight jumps in. And then you bring your rook in. Yes, he plays it. Teimour Radjabov showing some great positional skills here. Magnus tries to pin the knight. But is that going to be helpful? What's your threat? Because you're not threatening to move the knight. I'll simply trade the queens. b4 doesn't win anything yet because the bishop controls this square. It's just a irritating pin, but can I not go like rook c8 simply here? Oh, he goes knight d7. That's also a very nice move. Defending the knight, preparing rook c8, attacking this pawn just in case you want to move the rook. Black's position suddenly starts looking pretty good here. You can see Magnus getting a bit uncomfortable. It's not just about this game. It's also how your tournament is going. It's not going so well for Magnus, who's generally flawless in such tournaments. And now he's down to 50 seconds. Teimour has 20 seconds edge on the clock. He plays his queen to d3. It's not that move that you make with a lot of happiness. Rook c8 played. The bishop has to drop back. And I think in a way he defends his h4 pawn. Rook comes in. So a good idea now is to play rook c6, knight c4. And start to kind of put pressure on the white position. But Teimour also starts to think a bit too much. He's down to 40 seconds. Well, he goes queen b4. Not a bad move at all. If you play a3, he might as well settle down here, or queen c4. Knight jumps to f4. Where exactly is the knight heading? Maybe to h5 to put pressure here. That might be his idea. Or to just move the knight to e2 with rooks doubling down the c file. Yeah, in a way, if you double on the c file and play knight e2, that would put black in some discomfort. He plays queen c4, offering a trade of queens. Magnus can trade, but that would ease out black's position with knight takes c4. Radjabov has 25 seconds. Magnus has 34. He plays queen d2. Queen goes back to c6, but this is not a great idea. He should have kept it on b4. Rook goes to c1. Knight c4 attacks the queen. Queen goes to e2. And now it's difficult because here there's b3 coming up. There's pressure down the b5. And Magnus brings the knight back. Queen a8 is important, but he goes g5 too quickly. Takes, knight jumps to h5, looking at these two squares. Radjabov has 20 seconds, queen a8, so that if b3, he can go knight b6 and he can save his rook. That's an important move. Instead, he goes bd6, and now b3 just loses a piece. Takes, king takes, and even if you give a check, I just come back. You can't go knight b6 because rook takes, knight takes, and you lose material. King e7 takes, pawn takes, and Radjabov is hoping that this pawn chain gives him some play. Knight goes to d2, knight f6. Now he takes. Check. f4. He takes the pawn. Pawn takes pawn. The king is safe here. He gives a check and trades the queen. King comes back. And knight jumps in. Now you can take here, but I'll just simply take it with the d pawn. So Radjabov tries to muddy the waters, maybe threatening a check here, followed by queen takes f3. And then a rook coming in. So Magnus' final move has to be careful. Although the h8 square is controlled, so the final rook check isn't really coming. Whoa, he goes rook b1. He sees through his opponent's moves. So takes. There's no mate. Rook h7 played. And now rook b7. King goes back. Rook h2. Fantastic chess here. Because if you take, king takes. There's a mate here if you take the knight. That's a very important point. King g8 check, king f8, queen f6, and there's a forced mate coming in on the f7 square. Radjabov resigns. Magnus Carlsen scores a win. A very interesting game. When it became really intense, it was Magnus who had the better moves on the board. Radjabov can be proud of himself for playing a very good game there, putting Magnus under pressure, but it wasn't enough.